Tonight on The Buzz, we are looking at the evolving role of editing and editors. We start with Sue Lawson, senior editor for Chicago Edit. Tonight, she talks about managing clients, budgets, and expectations. Next, editor William Boodell shares his thoughts on how the role of the editor has changed, how he approaches projects, and the challenges of earning a living as a professional editor. Next, editor Adam Bedford talks about the changes he's seen in editing over the last 5 years and explains what he does to make his company stand out from the competition. Next, Alan Edward Bell has edited feature films for nearly 30 years. Tonight, he talks about the changes he's seen over the years, the challenge of editing features, and what he sees as the future of editing. All this plus James DeRuvo with this week's doddleNEWS update. The Buzz starts now.
Since the dawn of digital filmmaking,
authoritative,
one show serves a worldwide network of media professionals,
current,
uniting industry experts,
production,
filmmakers,
post-production,
and content creators around the planet.
Distribution.
From the media capital of the world in Los Angeles, California, the Digital Production Buzz goes live now.
Welcome to the Digital Production Buzz, the world's longest-running podcast for the creative content industry, covering media production, post-production, and marketing around the world. Hi, my name is Larry Jordan. Over the last few weeks, we've been looking at the current state of our industry. We started 2 weeks ago talking with producers. Last week, we spoke with post-production companies. Next week, we'll chat with cinematographers, and tonight, we're talking with editors. The world of editing is changing. Tools are getting cheaper. Competition is increasing while budgets are decreasing, and clients know more about the post-production process than ever before. Yet in spite of these challenges, many editors are succeeding. Tonight, we talk with 4 successful editors whose projects range from small independent films through to corporate, broadcast, and feature film projects. Discover what they're doing to stand out from the competition, deal with ever tighter deadlines, manage their clients, and why they remain hopeful for the future. By the way, if you enjoy The Buzz, please give us a positive rating and review in the iTunes store. We appreciate your support to help us grow our audience. And now it's time for our doddleNEWS update with James DeRuvo. Hello, James.
Let me be the first to say Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays.
And a very happy holiday to you. Christmas is just way too soon.
It's every year at December 25th, Larry.
Well, I got to read the calendar more carefully, I guess. James, what do we got for news this week?
Apple has further explained the killing of legacy media codec support. They have created a very detailed list of all the 32-bit media legacy codecs that the next major version of Mac OS will not support. The good news is that this change isn't going to be happening immediately, so filmmakers will be able to deal with it and plan on how to convert all their old media files into a more modern codec. And Apple is going to help by offering a conversion feature in the next version of Final Cut Pro. But I hear that you have some notes on that.
I do. I think that putting the conversion utility in Final Cut is the wrong spot. I think the conversion utility needs to be a standalone app or integrated in Compressor, because most legacy files haven't been edited in Final Cut Pro 10, and there's no reason to bring them in. So we'll just have to see if Apple creates an easier version for us to convert or just simply makes it a flag within Final Cut, and for now the jury is still out.
Yeah, well, Larry, change is inevitable, and no company knows that more than Apple. They prune the feature set of their software all the time in order to keep it moving forward with their future plans. Meanwhile, Blackmagic is pointing out that DaVinci Resolve has created custom media codecs that will support many of these older codecs that Apple is abandoning. But if the OS is going to leave them behind, will that force DaVinci users to make the switch back to Windows? It's really kind of confusing.
Well, the good news is that it's confusing before the change has occurred. And so we have time to learn more and time to plan, and nothing is going to happen in the next 2 or 3 months, which gives all of us a chance to learn what's going on. But potentially, this is a really big deal for media folks, especially with large libraries of older footage.
Yeah.
And I'm going to talk more about this in my Just Thinking segment later in tonight's show, and we'll have continued coverage of this in upcoming weeks. James, what's our second story?
Filmic Pro, the preeminent mobile filmmaking app on the iPhone and now on the Android devices, has just come out with a brand new update, which is further dialing in their log codec. Log version 2 now can exceed 12 stops of dynamic range on a mobile device. Plus, it gives a maximum bit rate for 4K to 130 megabits per second. And they've added a new Pro LUT packs with the .cube format for better compatibility with Premiere, Final Cut, and DaVinci. And not to be outdone, Moment Lenses, they're that company that makes those really nice lenses for your smartphones. They've upgraded their Pro Camera app to offer several new professional features as well, including histograms and waveform monitors, multiple bit rates, dual channel audio meters, and bit rates up to 100 megabits per second.
James, what makes all this newsworthy?
Well, it all has to do with the emerging field of mobile filmmaking. John Lasseter once said that the mobile phone would change the way we look at filmmaking and that more and more filmmakers would move to the mobile platform to make their films. And as the iPhone and Android platforms become more powerful, they may begin to rival the lower-end cinema cameras like the Blackmagic 4K Pocket and the Panasonic GH5S. It's really an exciting time to be a mobile filmmaker.
Exciting and confusing at the same time. Okay, we've covered Apple and Filmic Pro and Moment for that fact. What's our third story?
There's a new tripod out that you simply must see, Larry. It's called the Squid Rig.
The Squid Rig. What the heck is this?
It is a tripod mounting accessory that you can attach onto just about any tripod that enables you to have two telescoping monopod-like arms which will hold your video lights, and then a 4-foot-long magic arm for holding a microphone. It's ideal for doing interviews when you're the only one on the crew. So if you're a one-man crew or a documentarian and you're doing interviews, the Squid Rig is going to be your new best friend.
Well, what makes it special?
Well, corporate shooters and documentarians are looking to do a fast interview will love Squid Rig because it sets up in minutes and enables the shooter to only carry one piece of supporting gear. He won't have to lug in lighting stands. He won't have to lug in something to hold the microphone or hire a boom pole operator. He can just use the third magic arm in order to hold his microphone and just get it just out of the camera frame. And the mounting arm plates can attach to most tripods, or you can buy a complete Squid Rig package with the Manfrotto 290 tripod. It's a very clever tool that I think every indie will want in their camera package. Squid Rig.
I have got to go look this one up. James, what other stories you following this week?
Other stories we're following, we have holiday gift guides covering software, audio, and hardware, instructions on how to build an ultralight and collapsible carbon fiber boom pole using a monopod, and a filmmaker explains why he still uses his 8-year-old DSLR to shoot all of his film projects, and his reasoning is painfully simple. What's cooking on the buzz tonight?
Tonight, we're looking at the evolving role of the editor in media today, from corporate to broadcast to feature films. Editors are being asked to do more and do it with less. Tonight, we learn how some of the most successful ones are doing exactly that.
Well, that ought to be a very interesting show to listen to, especially if you're cutting.
The thing that I really like is we've got a great range from people that work on small independent shorts like William Boodell to people that edit broadcasts like Adam Bedford and Sue Lawson to people that are doing high-end feature films with Alan Edward Bell. It's a great range of editors all talking about the business of being an editor.
Well, I look forward to hearing it.
I look forward to sharing the show with you. Where can we go on the web to learn more about the stories you and your team are covering?
All these stories and more, including one on the Squid Rig, can be found at doddleNEWS.com.
And James DeRuvo is the editor-in-chief of Doddle News and joins us every week. We'll see you next Thursday.
Happy holidays.
Here's another website I want to introduce you to, doddleNEWS.com. Doddle News gives you a portal into the broadcast, video, and film industries. It's a leading online resource presenting news, reviews, and products for the film and video industry. doddleNEWS also offers a resource guide and crew management platform specifically designed for production. These digital call sheets, along with their app, directory, and premium listings, provide in-depth organizational tools for busy production professionals. doddleNEWS is a part of the Thalo Arts community, a worldwide community of artists, filmmakers, and storytellers. From photography to filmmaking, performing arts to fine arts, and everything in between, Thalo is filled with resources you need to succeed. Whether you want the latest industry news, need to network with other creative professionals, or require state-of-the-art online tools to manage your next project, there's only one place to go: doddleNEWS.com. Sue Lawson is the senior editor and owner of Chicago Edit, Inc. In her spare time, she also runs the Chicago Creative Pro User Group. Hello, Sue. Welcome back.
Hi, Larry. Nice to be back.
Tonight, we're looking at the changing role of the editor. And you've been editing for more than 15 years. How has the role of the editor changed over the last few years?
Well, just from my perspective, I see it as being less segmented than it used to be. When I started, I would go into companies and they would have animators and art departments and motion graphic designers and a whole slew of people that I would be working with, collaborating with. And I'm finding that to be the exception as opposed to the rule these days. I think that more and more we're expected to wear all of those hats. It is a rarity when I get to work with a colorist and a sound engineer or a sound designer. We find that, at least in this market, more and more we're doing it all.
Is the role of becoming a jack of all trades your biggest challenge, or are there other significant challenges to editing today?
There are a lot of challenges. Yes, being able to do it all and do it all incredibly well on time and on budget is always a challenge. But the other challenge is keeping up with the technology, because it is constantly changing and we need to be aware of it and be ready for it and change with it.
Why is keeping up with technology so important?
It's how we make our living. I mean, just the changing codecs and things. We need to know what's coming. We need to know what we need to do to be prepared for our clients. 360 video, virtual reality, everything that keeps coming down the pipeline that they keep throwing at us, we need to be ready for, or at least able to gather the information quickly so we can move. We need to be able to move. We need to be quick and agile with these things.
One of the things you mentioned is your biggest challenge is keeping up with technology.
Mm-hmm.
I was surprised that it was a technology answer, not a business answer.
Well, I just think that the technology keeps changing so much. There are always new options out there for us. And because these days you are expected to do it all, I can't just sit there and say, that's good enough, let me hand this off to the audio guy. I have to fix all that audio myself that they should have done a good job with when they recorded it. But I've got to go ahead and fix all that myself. I have to go ahead and do all the color work myself. I have to do those things because although I see budgets increasing, I don't see them in this market, at least with my client base yet, going back to those good old days where they had somebody for each one of those aspects. Animations, it's another thing. They want amazing animations, and now I have to do all those myself.
So really, one of the key tips for the future is you can't be a specialist. You've got to be a generalist.
I think that that's very well put. Absolutely.
You mentioned a core part of the equation, which is clients. One of the things that we learned in the last couple of weeks is that the clients themselves are changing. Are you seeing that clients are demanding different things, or are the clients themselves different today?
We've seen this coming for a while, that they try to do it themselves because of the great marketing of all of the major players when it comes to the software, the platforms. They make it seem as though anybody can do this. And anybody can press a button, but to go ahead and be creative, that's still the challenge. And that's why they need actual editors and actual creative people to do those things. Just my 2 cents on that. But I actually think, as far as my clients are concerned, and those are really the only ones I can speak to, my clients, I think, are becoming more appreciative of what it takes. And maybe because they tried to do it themselves, they're becoming more appreciative of what it takes to actually create good video. And they are, I'd like to say that the pendulum here is swinging back towards, let's hire professionals to do these things. We want somebody to do it who can do a good job and knows what they're doing and doesn't take us away from our key responsibilities.
But how do you convince a client of the worth of creativity when the costs of the software and the costs of the tools and the costs of the hardware are dropping so dramatically?
Well, you're right. It is a money equation. It's dollars and cents. And overall, I think that they have to take a look at what they want that video to do for them. Somehow there is a monetary equation to it, not the amount of money that it takes to create it, to make it, to produce it, or do post-production on it, but is it a sales video? Is it a video that is a branding video? Those are a lot of the ones that I do. Is it a video that's destined, they hope, for distribution somewhere, as far as maybe going to a film festival? It has to be accepted. And sometimes they don't understand that you can't just send them something that was kind of a good idea. They at least need to come to you for the finishing and the polishing, because that rough cut is going to get them nowhere. It's going to be wasted money and wasted time and wasted effort on their part if they go ahead and send that out. The bigger challenge, I think, are all the new up-and-comers, the kids, the youngsters, who are incredibly creative and incredibly talented and truly bringing something to the field that makes us all sit up and say, wow, they're good. The challenge is that they don't value their own creativity yet to the extent that they're charging what they should. And they undercut themselves, which ends up undercutting all of us. I actually have an editor that I was talking to the other day who told me he doesn't understand why he's not getting more work, because he said, I'm, as cheap as I can possibly be. He's very talented, but he's also as cheap as he can possibly be. And I think that sends a message to clients these days as well. I don't think that they want the cheapest. I think that they value creativity, they value experience, and it should be a value for value experience. So if they think that they're getting this for nothing, that's how much value they attribute to it.
Which do you see shrinking faster, the time you get to work on a project or the budgets you're paid for it?
I'm happy to say that I have seen this change over the past few years, and maybe I'm happy to say that, I see the time shrinking more than the budgets these days. The budgets seem to be rebounding to where they need to be, at least on my end of things. I don't have people questioning how much I charge and trying to talk me down in price. And maybe that's just because I'm not attracting those lower budget clients anymore. I'm attracting the ones who appreciate what I do and are willing to pay the price that I charge for it, which is fair and reasonable.
Well, that gets to, I think, a core question that all of us are wrestling with. What do you do to keep your existing clients and then find new ones?
That's a hard one for me. To keep my existing clients, I just keep doing absolutely everything I can to make them happy. I do the best work that I possibly can. I turn in quality work to them on time, on budget, hopefully early sometimes. And I keep trying to raise the bar. I want to always improve upon what it is I'm giving them, because you can't rest on your laurels. If they loved what I did last month, 2 months from now, they have to love it even more. They have to love the next one that I do. They have to sit there and say, wow, she's always upping her game with this. So that's how I keep the existing ones. As far as attracting new clients, for me, it is 98, 99% word of mouth. I do not do any advertising. For better or worse, I haven't had time. And I know you always have to keep something in that sales funnel, but I have not had time for that because, knock wood, I've been so busy working. which is, I think, the challenge most people have if they run their own company, if they are a freelancer or an independent contractor. It's trying to go ahead and keep bringing in more clients while they're busy, because the time that they have to look for them is when they're not. And then it's like, oh my gosh, what happened? I have no work. But most of mine are referrals. They're word of mouth. They're word of mouth from clients and word of mouth and referrals from other editors. And that, I think, is the highest praise. If an editor goes ahead and refers me to a client that came to them, that's awesome. That's awesome.
As you mentioned, we're beset by challenges, and yet we're also beset by opportunities. From your perspective, what does the future look like for professional editors? Is there hope?
I'm going to say yes. I certainly think so, or else I would be working at Starbucks. I think that they give you free coffee. Yeah, I think so. I think that there is definitely hope, because I see the content creation side of things just exploding. And because of that, because everybody everywhere is looking for content, I believe that they are always going to need editors. It is finding the right clients who know what they want, can communicate that to you, and have a budget for it.
For people that want to hire you to edit their next project, where can they go on the web?
Oh, my website is Chicago Edit. Chicago like the town, edit like what I do, chicagoedit.com. But I will say that, once again, I've been so busy, my website has not been updated for a long time.
Well, if you can squeeze into Sue's schedule, that website is all one word, chicagoedit.com. And Sue Lawson is the senior editor and owner of Chicago Edit. And Sue, thanks for talking with us today.
Thanks for having me, Larry. It's always a pleasure.
Writer, director, and editor William Boodell started his professional career as the editor of the instant cult classic Sharknado. Now he's editing a variety of independent short films. Hello, Bill. Welcome back.
Hello. Good to be back.
Bill, tonight we're looking at the evolving role of the editor. To get us started, what projects are you working on now?
Well, I literally just finished editing a trailer for a Hallmark TV movie. Before that, I cut the movie itself.
So, from your perspective, how has editing changed over the past 5 or so years?
Over the past 5 or so years, I would say that the machines are obviously, the software is getting better and better in terms of being less clunky and easier to use and more professional. I would say that it takes less time and that people are demanding that you do things more quickly than in the past. For me, this means that there's less time for sort of considered creativity, but it also does force you to rely more on your instincts when you're editing that quickly.
Yeah, relying on your instincts is sometimes a trick, though, isn't it? Because sometimes they're right and sometimes they're wrong.
Absolutely. I work very instinctually, and I certainly think that ideally you edit with your instincts and you go back, and you take some time with what you've done. It's very much like writing. You're writing with images and sound. So you put all your edits down. You give your first impression of the material. You try to listen to it as best you can, what the characters are saying, what the story is saying, what the themes are, what the scene is doing, etc. And then you go back and you see whether you've achieved that, whether you are serving the story or the piece that you're creating, and you change accordingly. And definitely there is time needed after you have worked instinctually to improve things and make things better.
You've mentioned that the technology has improved over the years and deadlines have gotten a bit shorter. How has your approach to projects changed over the years?
Well, I've definitely had to speed up as an editor, and I have. Last year I cut a Hallmark Christmas movie. They started shooting on October 23rd, and it aired on December 2nd. This year, I edited another one starting around the same day, and it airs in a few days on December 23rd. So it's, again, forced me to think about things very instinctually, to figure out mental tricks or editing hacks, as they might say, that help you to move more quickly to find the best material as soon as possible and to spend as much time with you can with what is worthwhile and dismiss what is not.
You've talked about the changes in technology. Are clients the same, or have clients changed either in terms of what they expect or the actual clients themselves?
Well, the clients have changed in terms of their expectations, I believe, in terms of time, definitely. Also, I think that there are a lot more people editing, and I think in some ways this has driven down the amount that people are willing to pay, some because they are willing to hire less experienced editors to do things, on machines that they can now use relatively easily. The problem is you run into people who don't really know necessarily how to tell stories sometimes, or don't have the experience telling stories. So it's a trade-off, and it just depends on what the client wants and what sort of level of creativity and editing technique they're looking for. So, and that's all related to the technology and the way things have changed and improved in terms of how much you can do in the time you're given.
Well, if the technology is more accessible, what are you doing to hang on to the clients you've got?
Well, first of all, I would say, obviously, you try to be the best editor you can be, and that is studying story, watching films, watching television, seeing what other editors are doing, seeing how they tell a story efficiently. Anytime you watch a film or a TV show or any kind of content and you don't notice the editing, but you feel the rhythm and you feel that it is, glided past you in a way that it's pure story going into your brain, you really want to go back and say, okay, how did they do this? Because bad editing is obvious. That you won't have any problem spotting. But really good editing, while sometimes, good editing can be showy, I'm not one of those people who thinks that good editing is always invisible. I think sometimes you can do things that are flashy or that draw attention to itself if it serves the story. But even so, it is working at a rhythm and in a way that serves the piece. And whenever you see that, it's always good to study that. So I try to do that. That's what I do. I watch things. I talk to people. I talk to other editors. I try to break things down. And then I go in and, just doing it myself is the best way to learn. Look at what you've done, see what you've done poorly, go back and do it again, and do it again, and then do it again.
You mentioned not only are deadlines getting shorter, but budgets are getting smaller. What do you do to keep your costs down and work within budgets?
Well, it's a lot of it is trying to adhere to demanding, I was going to say insane, demanding schedules that make it worth your while to be paid the amount that they have budgeted to pay the editor. So you have to make sure, obviously, that you can put food on the table and, pay your rent and bills and live a relatively unchaotic life. And so it demands that you both work hard and quickly, but also that you sometimes turn down jobs that aren't paying enough with people who have expectations that are going to force you to do a poor job or to not give a project what it deserves, and also that won't afford, that you won't be able to afford what they're going to pay you. So it's a combination of different things. You're basically trying to make the best judgments you can on a project-by-project basis in those ways.
As we've talked about, there's a lot of pressures on editors today, shrinking budgets and deadlines while the job description keeps expanding. What keeps you hopeful?
I know, I don't know if this sounds arrogant, but I think that what keeps me hopeful is storytelling and loving that. And that as long as you understand story, character, themes, ideas, rhythm, the things that are essential, because a lot of people like to focus on the technology, and the technology is fascinating, and there's a there's a rabbit hole and a wormhole of things that you can dive into and not really pay attention to what is actually central to editing, which is writing with images and sound and talking to other people with these things. And so what keeps me hopeful is the knowledge that I know that I can do that, seeing other people do it well, knowing that there is an art to it, that it's not just button pushing, that people can pay button pushers if they want, or they can pay people who tell stories. And that keeps me hopeful.
I love that. That's a nice way to end. And so for people that want to hire you for their next project, where can they go on the web?
So there's my website, williamboodell.com, which also, as your previous guest said, hasn't been updated in a while. But if you scroll down to the bottom of it, there are links to my LinkedIn, my Twitter, and my Instagram pages, all ways that you can find me. My Instagram is @instaboodell, and my website is williamboodell.com.
That's all one word, WILLIAM, William Boodell, BOODELL, williamboodell.com. And Bill, thanks so much for taking the time to chat with us. Have yourself a wonderful holiday. And
you too, Larry. Thank you.
Best of success for the new year.
Thank you. Same to you.
Take care. Bye-bye. Adam Bedford is an editor who works in the U.S., U.K., and Australia. His projects include feature and short films, television trailers, and documentaries. Hello, Adam. Welcome back.
Hi, Larry. How you doing?
I am really looking forward to our conversation because you and I have worked together many times over the years. We haven't touched base recently, and tonight we're looking at the changing role of the editor. You've been editing for a long while now. How has the role of the editor changed recently?
I think in a nutshell, Larry, you have more to do in less time. That's probably the most succinct way I'd put it.
Meaning what?
The software allows you to do more, but you also have less time to do it in because deadlines are shortened. Things have to go to air much faster. It's more than just TV now because things have to go online to the web. They all have drop dates. Comes back to more to do in less time. That's just from my experience.
So how do you cope? How do you get more done in less time?
I think having a calm, steady hand helps. Lots of coffee.
Are you using technology in different ways today than you were 2 years ago to be able to keep up with the crushing deadlines?
My workflow hasn't changed that much. The more experienced you become, you tend to work faster and you know what your clients are after. And you end up working with a lot of the same clients when so you know what they want. It becomes more or less a shorthand.
Let's talk about clients for just a minute. What's different about clients today compared to years past? Are they asking for different things, or are the clients themselves actually different?
Clients nowadays are a little more savvy to the process than they used to be. They know more or less how the sausage is made, or they think they do in some cases. I won't go into detail. The notes process has changed where clients will say, yeah, can you adjust this frame here? We want this. Where it used to be more abstract, where it's like, tell us this story. Can you make it do this? And either way is fine. I give people what they want, or at least try to. So I think that's just the biggest process. Clients are more savvy to the process, so they tend to they know what they want a little more.
One of the comments that was made when we were talking to post houses last week is the clients themselves had changed. In the past, they were dealing with broadcast and cable clients, but now they're dealing with streaming media, companies that didn't exist 5 years ago. Or they're dealing with corporate that wants to get more work on social media. Are you seeing your clients change, or are they pretty much the same as they were a few years ago?
I'm seeing new clients pop up in that sense in terms of social media. Now, streaming media is a whole different ball of wax because we're dealing with new formats, new delivery requirements. It used to be with broadcast, everything had to be in a certain way, and we're seeing a little more flexibility there. It's great not having to deliver on tape anymore. I don't think I've even delivered on DVD in about 8 or 9 years now. So I think that's the biggest thing.
What are you doing to keep your clients? Because with the tools becoming more and more affordable, more and more people are hanging out shingles. Let's say they're an editor. So what are you doing to retain the clients that you've got, and how do you differentiate yourself from everybody else that's out there?
That's a big problem that's happening in the industry now. Too many people think they can just go and spend $299 on Final Cut and call themselves an editor. I think at the end of the day, the work is what differentiates you from someone else. And if the client, whoever they may be, whether it be a film producer or a TV show or a corporate client or whatever, if they're happy with working with you is in a pleasant experience and the work is solid and they're happy with it overall, I think everybody just wants to make life easier and they'll just keep working with you, rather than go and find somebody else. But then it comes down to the cost aspect as well. You have to know what you're worth. And there are a lot of people out there who are hungry for work and trying to get work, and they'll undercut other people to their own detriment because they're selling themselves short in the long run, because you're reducing the value of what our craft is. And we're not just button pushers. We're paid to make decisions, not push buttons. The buttons are just the tools. And at the end of the day, by doing that, it's making life harder for everybody else.
So which seems to be shrinking faster, given all this competition, the deadlines or the budgets?
I think they're both shrinking, and I think they both go hand in hand.
So then how do you keep your clients from drifting off to somebody who's going to charge less?
Well, that's the thing, and it's always something you have to keep in the back of your head. I think just make sure your rates are competitive, but not to the point where you're selling yourself short or selling your value. It's like, this is who I am, this is what we've done. I can work with you to a point, but if that's the budget you have, then I'm sorry, then I wish you the best of luck. Now, I've had instances where that's happened with clients, and they've gone on and worked with other people, and I found they've come back to me to fix all the errors in their mistakes. It all comes back to that old saying, you get what you pay for, and buy cheap, buy twice. I found that those clients that I've lost down the road, 8 out of 10 of them have come back because they weren't happy with where they ended up.
Before we actually started recording this interview, you told me that you were fortunately working on tons of projects this last year and are looking forward to taking a little bit of a rest over the holiday. But at some point, you need to find new clients. How do you do that?
I think just getting out there, in LA especially, networking is the main thing, just making contact with people, with producers, with clients. Also, your credit list helps. The more you do, the more you get out there, and just being a presence, whether it be on social media. And I have to admit, this year my social media presence has been very lacking because I've been fortunate enough to be so busy on several different movies and TV shows. So I think just getting out there and just being noticed, and because it all comes back to, if a tree falls in the forest, you never hear it. So, and there are lots and lots and lots of good editors in town. But if nobody knows what you can do, you kind of just fall by the wayside, if that makes any sense.
No, it makes perfect sense. One of the big buzzwords that we have in our industry is AI. Has AI and machine learning affected your workflow at all?
Not directly. I'm sure on some level it has through the software I'm using. At the end of the day, I'm not worried about, I know I've seen things online about computers editing sequences with AI. And I think that down the road that will help in terms of cutting string outs and whittling down really long footage timelines. But I don't see it being a danger. I don't see it replacing a feature film editor or a television show editor, because it all comes back to that human decision-making process. A computer can't craft nuance in a story or a performance. So I think we're okay for that. I think it can only help for now.
As I paint the picture that we've been talking about for the last few minutes, we've got declining budgets, we've got shorter deadlines, we've got rising competition, and we've got fickle clients.
Oh, you make it sound so appealing, Larry.
So if all of that's true, what makes you hopeful?
The fact that, like with my own business, I'm gravitating more towards narrative. I think just the content that's on the horizon. There's so many more streaming platforms. There will be no shortage of content to do with like Hulu and Netflix and everybody else. So I think the work will be there. It's just a case of navigating yourself and just working hard enough to be ready in the right place at the right time for when it's time to go in.
So what advice would you give to somebody who is trying to navigate themselves? What should they do?
Well, you've heard this a million times, but network, and perfect your craft. Sure, the tools are important and learning how to use the software, but it's only half of the process. You have to tell a story, and if you can't tell a story or craft some sort of nuance or learn music and how to tell stories with music as well, then you need to do that if you want to get ahead.
For people that decide that you are the best person to edit their next project, where can they go on the web?
Oh, I love those people. AdamBedfordOnline.com.
That's all one word, ADAM, Adam Bedford, BEDFORD, online, AdamBedfordOnline.com. And Adam Bedford himself is the voice you've been listening to. And Adam, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Larry.
I want to introduce you to a new website, Thalo.com. Thalo is an artist community and networking site for creative people to connect, be inspired, and showcase their creativity. Thalo.com features content from around the world with a global perspective on all things creative. Thalo is the place for creative folks to learn, collaborate, market, and sell their works. Thalo is a part of Thalo Arts, a worldwide community of artists, filmmakers, and storytellers. From photography to filmmaking, performing arts to fine arts, and everything in between, Thalo is filled with the resources you need to succeed. Visit Thalo.com and discover how their community can help you connect, learn, and succeed. That's Thalo.com. Alan Edward Bell is a feature film editor with more than 19 credits, including Red Sparrow, The Hunger Games, The Amazing Spider-Man, and Water for Elephants, as well as many others. He's also a member of the American Cinema Editors, which is called ACE. Hello, Al. Welcome back.
Well, thank you very much. I'm happy to be here, Larry.
This week, we're looking at the changing role of the editor. And you've been editing features for a long time. How has the editor position changed over the last few years?
Well, it's interesting because in narratives, the editor's role hasn't really changed all that much, other than we need to be able to do a lot more than we were able to, say, 10 years ago. So editors are doing quite a bit more. I mean, it used to be we would put together an assembly, and then maybe we'd have a studio screening, and that studio screening may or may not have music. Some of the effects may or may not be done. There may be storyboards. And, 10 years ago, maybe a first cut screening wasn't as polished as it's expected to be today. I mean, now when you're cutting a movie, I've heard some of the other people talk about schedules being tighter. It's less about tight schedules and more about having a polished, finished looking, sounding piece earlier in the arc of the film process of finishing the film out. So, when I show a producer, it's very rare that I'll show a producer something without some of the effects being done or sound and music, just for the sole reason that that's what their expectations are. So you've got to wear several different hats as an editor today, maybe more so than you did, say, 5 or 10 years ago.
Is this additional polish necessary because the producers can't visualize what it would be without it, or is it because they're trying to accelerate deadlines?
I think in narrative, I think it's less about accelerating the deadlines and more about making sure that the film plays and is going to play for a wide audience or whatever demographic that they're looking for. Because once, the process of cutting a feature is once you've done your assembly, you and the director will work for, 10 weeks, maybe 12 weeks. Then we'll screen for the studio. And the studio really expects to see something that they can take to a theater and show 600 people who, don't even know what they're about to watch. A week or two after we've shown it to the studio, they want to be able to throw that into a screen and have a test screen or a series of test screens. And what experience has shown most editors and directors, as well as studios, is that the more polished those are, the higher chance you're going to get for decent numbers. And unfortunately, in the narrative world, those screens are very important in terms of whether or not the studio perceives the movie as working or being in trouble or where it needs to be fixed, and et cetera, et cetera.
Well, it sounds like it's part of the risk aversion process. They can't afford to take a lot of risks, so they want to make sure it's as good as it can be.
It's interesting because there's a whole lot of science out there that shows that the sheer act of screening and the questions and the way they ask the questions are skewed, and that it's highly questionable how much of that information is really truly valuable. If you're just looking at the numbers, you don't always get the solution isn't always as apparent as it could be. Malcolm Gladwell has a great book called Blink that illustrates that. Coke and Pepsi were doing all these tests, and Pepsi always came out on top, but then they discovered that because it was so sweet, people ended up switching back to Coke because it had a little bit more bite, even though they didn't get their tests right. So it is a risk aversion thing. I just don't know how wise it really is. You learn a lot from the screenings, more from just being in the room with the people and hearing them talk as they walk out. I love to go straight to the bathroom after these screenings and just listen to what people are saying. I learn a lot from that. And then, some of the questionnaires you learn some things from, but it's not always, it's sort of like people don't really know what they want. And if you ask them what they want, they might tell you what they think they want, but that's not necessarily it. So it can be confusing. But yes, I agree. It is a risk-averse industry.
That has got to drive you nuts, and we'll save that for another show because that's a whole speech in and of itself. What do you see? We've heard from a variety of different editors working at different levels within the industry, but from your perspective, what do you see as the biggest challenges for an editor today?
Well, I think staying on top of all the various different software tools you have at your disposal, that is one thing. And then I would say having a life outside of editing, and for me, that's been the biggest challenge, is because, as much as producers and directors and virtually anybody who has a bunch of footage that they want edited, as much as they would like to think that it can happen really quickly, if you shoot 30 hours worth of footage and you want a 20-minute piece or a 10-minute piece out of that, well, it's going to take me 30 hours to watch it. It's going to take me even longer to really digest it and understand that footage from beginning to end, and then create the piece for you. So, you might, it's only a 10-minute piece. Yeah, but you shot 30 hours, so it's going to take me 30 hours at least to look at it, and then it's going to take some time to sort of cut it and refine it. And so I think that the biggest issue is finding balance in the workplace. I mean, that has been my challenge sort of over the past 28, 30 years of being in the industry is, when you're young, it's really easy to just throw everything into it and work, 60, 70, 80-hour weeks. When you get to be 55, which is how old I am now, it's a little harder, and you start to realize the kinds of sacrifices that you're making in terms of your family. Your kids. If you're in the office all the time, you're not at home, and that for me is the biggest challenge. It's just that it's such a time-consuming enterprise. It really leaves nothing time for anything else. I mean, as an editor, if you are not editing or thinking about the movie, you're not doing your job. You literally cannot work and talk on the phone at the same time, which a lot of jobs out there you can't. You can be a stockbroker, you can talk on the phone, you can type, and there's so many different things you can do. Editing, you're either doing that or you're not editing. It's one or the other.
So this next is a two-sided question. One side is, what technology today concerns you the most as an editor? And the flip side is, what technology excites you the most as an editor?
Well, I mean, I would say that they're one and the same. I mean, I would say artificial intelligence concerns me the most, but it also excites me the most. In the short run, I'm very excited about the possible integration of some of what artificial intelligence is capable of today or could be tomorrow, in terms of helping me sort through tons of hours of footage, particularly when you're cutting things that aren't dialogue related, such as action scenes or montages. There are a lot of cases where, you'll be cutting a long action scene, or it shouldn't be long, but you've got so much footage, it feels long. And you really need to find those little bits and things. And I think that AI potentially could eventually help with some of that. Certainly could help for finding and organizing footage in ways that are just really labor-intensive for assistants and for editors as well. So that excites me. The idea of going, oh, hey, let me see all the close-ups of so-and-so in a red shirt, and not having to have somebody gone through and look at every single shot. Instead, the AI could be doing that. It could be cataloging that while I'm home asleep. Just have all these interesting visual indexes that I may not even be aware of, but I can simply type it in and boom, I get what I want. I'm also very interested in seeing how AI is going to be able to do some of these performance-enhancing visual effects that I tend to do an awful lot in my work, and I think more and more editors are doing that. I think it'll be very, very helpful in taking some of the labor-intensive aspects off of me from trying to take a mouth from one take and put it into another take, or her head turns here, but I really need to look at him and generate new frames where the head is looking in the right direction, stuff like that. So I'm very excited about that. I'm a little concerned about where that's going to be, say, 20 years from now. It's not really going to be my problem, but it might be, my kids' problems or the up-and-comers' problems, because there are certain things that eventually AI may, if it's successful, be able to do that will, like wedding videos may be cut by AI. There's a lot of different things that AI may eventually be good at. I don't think we're really very close yet, but I do see that coming down the road. So it concerns me a bit.
As we've heard this evening, these are a lot of challenging times, from radically changing technology and decreasing budgets and shorter deadlines and greater competition. What gives you hope as an editor?
Well, I think that today more than ever, there is more narrative content being made in the world than there ever has been. The biggest challenge that I see for a narrative editor today, somebody like me, who I basically just focused on feature film. So I don't do TV. I've never cut anything streaming. I've only cut things that go to major theaters. I think if I was a young person today, that would be a mistake, because there's an awful lot of wonderful content being made specifically for the air or streaming, and most of it's going to streaming. So you now have more opportunity if you want to get into narrative filmmaking because of streaming media. So I think that seasoned editors, there's plenty of work out there. There's always going to be more work out there. And the key is really understanding when to say yes and when to say no. So I'm very, very hopeful about the future, because I think there's a lot of work out there. And, even though the tools are incredibly cheap, and you hear this argument a lot where people say, oh, anybody can get a tool and call themselves an editor. The reality is that, yes, that's true. Anybody can get a pad of paper and a pen and call themselves a writer. Good writers rise to the top. Good editors rise to the top. And I'm not concerned so much about the fact that the tools are cheap. I think that that's one of the great aspects of technology and what's happening today, is that, now you can actually afford compositing software, sound design software, editing software. Virtually anything you're interested in doing, you can explore and become good at it and become sort of, I guess the best way for me to say is an editor has to be a generalist. You need to be able to do sound design, visual effects to a certain degree, and all of this on top of being able to tell stories. So if you can focus on telling stories, which will come naturally through experience, read a lot, watch movies, and learn the software, I think that the challenges that are out there today can be overcome. There's certainly tons of work out there.
Alan, for people that want to keep track of you, where can they reach you on the web?
I try to respond to everybody on Twitter, so you can get to me on @AlanEBell, Alan E. Bell, and just send me a tweet, and I'll try to respond. And that's pretty much how I get most of my information out there. Or they can call my agent.
Or your agent. That's always a wise choice as well. Alan Bell's Twitter handle is Alan E-B-E-L-L, Alan E. Bell. And Alan, I wish you and all of our listeners a wonderful holiday, and thanks again for taking the time to chat.
Thank you, sir. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye. You know, I was just thinking, the world of media is about to undergo a significant change. Last week, I reported that Apple announced that future versions of the Mac OS after Mojave will not play 32-bit legacy media codecs. You heard James DeRuvo talk about this more in the news segment at the beginning of the show, and in the Buzz Weekly newsletter that goes out Saturday morning, I'll include a link to the current updated article discussing this problem, which includes responses from Adobe, Avid, and Blackmagic Design to the upcoming changes. Apple's announcement points up an issue that we as media creators need to take to heart. Digital assets don't last forever. While we're used to frequent updates to our editing applications, we are not used to thinking about updating our media. Yet the days of storing media assets on the shelf and forgetting about it are ending. Not only does the hardware we store our media on age and stop working, the technology in the operating system itself, which our media needs for playback, also changes. This means that we need to take responsibility for tracking our media, knowing the codecs it uses and where our media is stored. We need to plan and budget to convert our media into newer formats, probably multiple times over its life, because digital media does not last forever. This transition is the first time that major codecs that we've used in the past are affected, but it most likely won't be the last. The days of actively managing our archives to preserve our media are now upon us. We need to pay attention, or we risk losing our past. Just something I'm thinking about. I want to thank our guests this week, specifically editors Sue Lawson, William Boodell, Adam Bedford, and Alan Edward Bell. There's a lot of history in our industry, and it's all posted to our website at digitalproductionbuzz.com. Here you'll find thousands of interviews, all online and all available to you today. And remember to sign up for our free weekly show newsletter that comes out every Saturday morning. Talk with us on Twitter at DPBuzz and Facebook at digitalproductionbuzz.com. Our theme music is composed by Nathan Doogie Turner with additional music provided by smartsound.com. Our producer is Debbie Price. My name is Larry Jordan, and thanks for listening to the Digital Production Buzz. The Digital Production Buzz is copyright 2018 by Thalo LLC.